Well, hey guys, today we're in downtown Tupelo, Mississippi, and we're going to explore their Civil Rights Trail. So come along with us, let's go explore. And oh yeah, before I forget, if you think you like this kind of content, why don't you boop that like button? We're going to walk you through downtown to Reed's Bookstore. We're going to take you to the location of Tupelo's Woolworth store. During the 1960s, F.W. Woolworth Company operated lunch counters at its five and dime stores on a local custom basis. Local custom basis meant that seating was racially segregated in the southern United States. As the movement to resist segregation grew, the Tupelo Woolworth store lunch counter was the scene of local protests. While other sit-ins were contentious, the Tupelo events were peaceful. In 1964, the passage of the Civil Rights Act prompted Woolworth to announce now the company will be able to serve all its customers and all of its stores on a desegregated basis. The Civil Rights Act was huge for us all, but especially for African Americans, but it would be several years before full integration was commonplace here in Tupelo. Sit-ins were an integral part of the nonviolent strategy of civil disobedience and mass protest that eventually led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. On February 1st, 1960, 4 African-American college students from the Agricultural and Technical College of North Carolina asked to be seated at the lunch counter of the Greensboro, North Carolina Woolworth store. This first sit-in didn't really do that much that day, but when a larger group returned the next day, the wire services picked up the story and word began to spread to other college campuses. Protests continued at that first Woolworth store and spread to other food counters in Greensboro. There were 54 sit-ins in 15 cities and 9 states in the South reported over the next 7 days. Of course, all the national attention helped the students to accelerate the pace of the civil rights movement. It also showed that nonviolent, direct action by youth could be very useful weapons in the war against segregation. Established during the 1850s, Spring Hill Missionary Baptist Church is the oldest African American church in Tupelo. The original sanctuary, completed in 1921, is still standing today. It's one of the oldest church buildings in Tupelo, having survived the tornado of 1936. This church progressed from a place of spiritual healing to one of social and political awareness, creating a litany of protests advocating rights afforded by the U.S. Constitution. Spring Hill Missionary Baptist Church has been that place of worship for many years and has also been an advocate for the rights of both its congregation and the African American community. The church has opened its doors for meetings of the United League, Freedom Marchers, NAACP, COFO, and area citizens. This allowed those groups to voice their dissatisfaction with voter registration, segregation of schools, local facilities and stores, police brutality, unfair hiring throughout the city, and all practices that were denied to African Americans simply because of the color of their skin. Civil rights marches in 76 and 79 began at this historic site. We're moving on to the Green Street Business District, which was once the hub of the black community. The area from Barn Street to Spring Street housed the majority of the black-owned businesses in Tupelo. This area served the spiritual, the entertainment, the commercial, and the educational needs of the African American community in Tupelo. Restaurants, clubs, funeral homes, stores, and the majority of Tupelo's black churches abounded. Grocery stores like Morgan's and Cherry Street Grocery and Mr. Max's Grocery served the needs of the area's African Americans. Mr. Cook's Shopping Plaza boasted a beauty shop, barber shop, and a liquor store. Carver School, the black school during segregation, anchored the north end of the street. It's named for George Washington Carver and built in 1939. In addition to educating children, the school produced many talented athletes and musicians. The campus also housed what was known as the playground during the summer months. The Desegregation Act of 1954 did not affect Carver directly until 1965, when freedom of choice took the place of separate but equal. A handful of students enrolled at Tupelo High School, not without controversy, but without the violence some experienced across the South. A greater number of elementary students enrolled at Church Street Elementary School. When the federal government mandated that all schools in the South must integrate, Carver School became a meeting center for the African American community. As you can see, full integration was not realized until many years after the 1955 Supreme Court ruling. Our next stop was Robbins Field, built in 1927 for Tupelo Mayor D.W. Robbins. This field served as Tupelo's football field until 1991. On Friday nights, the all-white Tupelo High School Golden Wave football team played here, while the state champion all-black Blue Devils of Carver High School played at Robbins Field on Saturday nights. In much of the South and Mississippi, black schools often had separate, inferior, or no football facilities. In Tupelo, even before desegregation, crowds, both African American and white, showed up to see the Carver Blue Devils football games and to hear the award-winning G.W. Carver Band. When the band paraded down the streets, black people and white people again united on common grounds along the streets and sidewalks to watch the G.W. Carver Band. Because of whites-only businesses and Jim Crow laws and the like, the Dixie Belle Theater operated exclusively for African Americans from 1950 to 55 and served as an important role in the community. Many escaped to watch the movies of the times and as part of a social center for the black community on Green Street. Touring R&B, blues, and jazz acts also performed here. In 1964, marching black citizens and Tupelo Police Department confronted each other here at the part of the property that housed the R.C. Cola bottling plant. At an NAACP meeting at the Henry Hampton Elks Lodge, the capacity crowd decided to march downtown to air their grievances. This was called the March of Discontent. As they marched down North Spring Street, they approached a police barricade near the R.C. Cola plant. A disturbance erupted and several windows were broken out of the R.C. Cola plant. And finally, we make our way back to Shake Rag. Shake Rag is located east of the old Mobile and Ohio railway tracks. By the 1920s, blues and jazz flowed freely in Shake Rag. Gospel music filled its churches. The neighborhood was leveled and its residents relocated for an urban renewal project that started in the late 60s. In 1928, Nap Hayes of Shake Rag was one of the first Tupelo area performers to make a record. Well, I hope you've enjoyed visiting the Tupelo Civil Rights Trail today, and maybe even you learned something. Thank you.